Okay, yay, we're live. Had a little bit of technology issues, but we are here. And today I am really excited to introduce you guys to my friend, Sarah Kendrick. Sarah and I met a few months ago, and she started sharing with me about what she is doing for individuals, families, and especially small business owners. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring you on LinkedIn Live because my audience, and if you are tuning in today, you need to listen to Sarah's story and also the amazing service she provides, that when you hear more about it, you'll be like, this is the most obvious thing that people need. Why in the world are we not preparing for this? So Sarah, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Jody. It's so lovely to be with you. And also, I would just like to point out that my little chief security officer is right here on my lap. So just so everyone knows, I'm well cared for right here by my little pup Hazel.
Well, that's perfect because I actually put a picture of you with your dog in the promotional materials.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah, it's probably my other dog, Milo, who is begging for food right now. But yes. Yeah, we've got the two and they're delightful. So I
love it. And for those of you who are in Indianapolis, also Sarah is a local Indianapolis entrepreneur as well. So we've been actually able to hang out in person, which is lovely. So fun, especially when we live most of our lives online, networking with people online. It's like, oh, we can actually meet for lunch.
Yeah, you're a whole person. You're not just a floating head. How lovely. Yeah.
So Sarah, please tell those that are tuning in to this, will you please let them know like what you do, who you help, how you help them, and how did you get into this? And if you forget one of my questions, I'll remind you.
Yes, thank you. I think I've got it, but just in case. Yeah. So I will start with the what. So I founded a business called Rhea Services, and I help families and small business owners to gather their essential information. So that's the short version. The slightly longer version is, you know this, as a mother, as a wife, as a business owner, there are a lot of things that you're holding that nobody else knows, especially about your business, right? And so that's great. However, if we are not there to provide the information that we have to someone who needs it, things get very complicated very quickly. And so I help people gather that information ahead of time so that when things go sideways, because they always do, because it's life, right? We've got what we need, and there's not this scramble of people trying to figure out, okay, oh my gosh, how do I pay the bills? And how do I contact Jody's clients and cancel her sessions? And, you know, how do I figure out how she pays for things? And does she have subscriptions to things? So those are all the things that we want to avoid that panic state. So let's get things gathered together ahead of time.
Yes. And what led you into this? Like, when did you have that aha moment that this was a very big problem that a lot of people need solved?
Yeah, well, it's a funny story. I like to say that I started this business accidentally because I had no intention of starting a business. I actually previously worked as a music therapist. I did that work for about 14 years and I really loved it, but it was also time for me to do something else. Didn't know what. But, you know, I thought I could probably figure something out. And I intended to just go get a job, right? Like the music therapy field is wonderful, but you care a lot and you're carrying a lot of things for people. So I was looking for something a lot simpler. But, you know, accidentally started a business instead, which is not simple or easy or straightforward, even remotely. But the aha moment for me came. It was kind of a twofold situation. Well, threefold, I guess, if you fold it enough. But so initially, I had read an article about a woman the year that I started my business. So in 2020, in early March, so before everything went sideways with COVID and all of that, I had read an article about a woman who had lost her husband really suddenly. They were only in their early 40s, and he got a really late stage cancer diagnosis. And then he was gone in about 30 days. And just, you know, my heart went out to her when I read that. And part of what she talked about in that article was having to manage what she called the business of death. So after someone dies, you have to finalize everything that they held or transfer it over. So if, you know, all of the bank accounts, all of the insurance information, the car, the cell phone, you know, subscription, like somebody has to manage all of that information. And that's what she was talking about, that business of death. And she just had to call over and over and tell people that her husband had died. And frankly, customer service people, it's not that they don't, I mean, they don't care because they don't know you, right? It's not that they're uncaring people. It's just that they've got a job to do and they're just trying to do their job, right? So there's not a lot of empathy there sometimes. But so my initial thought was, there's got to be a better way. Surely there is someone who is able to come alongside families who are grieving and do some of that work for them, doing some of the administrative supports of calling those companies, canceling the cable, canceling the cell phone, so that you aren't having to do it as the person who's lost a loved one. And so that's actually where I started my business, was doing this work for families. Unfortunately, my own family was one of my first clients. In 2020, within about 3 months of each other, we lost both of my grandmas. And my parents were both of the executors, and they were underwater. Like it was a really hard time for them. And so I was able to come alongside and do some of this work for them. And so it affirmed, okay, this was a good idea. Yes, I can't find anybody else doing it. It worked to help my family. Should I try and help other families?
Yes.
And so that's where I started, was doing that work of closing things down and managing some of those pieces on behalf of the bereaved.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I know that your business and your services have kind of morphed into something that's for planning.
Yes.
And this is the piece that I really, if you are watching this, you would have to pay attention to this, because this is definitely not on your radar. This is not something that's on your to-do list or that's on your radar or that you're thinking about. And unfortunately, you can't avoid having to think about these things, or your loved ones can't avoid having to think about these things. So talk to me and share with our listeners, our viewers, more about the pre-planning, like eliminating all of this crazy stress on the back end for your family members.
So in helping my own family, part of what we ran into, and other families too, was just we didn't know the answers. So my favorite example to share is there was this life insurance policy that I was trying to track down for one of my grandmothers. The paperwork was older than I am, and it was so old that they didn't use social security numbers or anything on it. Like it was just her name. And so the company had changed hands a couple of times. Like it was, is this even a thing? Does this policy exist? So that's the kind of thing that most people run into, is just you don't know the information because you're not the one that held it, and then you've got to figure it out. And so in helping both my family and others kind of sort out some of those pieces, I was like, okay, now again, there's got to be a better way. And so surely there's a way for us to gather this information together ahead of time. And so that's why I started the pre-planning side of the business. So I created my own book. There were a lot of resources out there, but they didn't combine the pieces that I wanted, which was both the informational piece and then also the softness of recognizing that if you're looking at this book, someone has died, someone close to you. And so I wanted it to be both practical and soft, which is an interesting combination, but I think that I've pulled it together. And so just kind of addressing the fact that this was a human and this was their experience and their life. And it's not important to just have the information. It's really important to have some of their memories and some of their stories. And so putting those things together. And so I started guiding families through that work. So part of the benefit of working with me as opposed to just getting a book. So I actually offer a more hands-on approach because I know that the process is overwhelming. Like I bought a book years ago before I had any idea of starting this business. My husband had lost an aunt really suddenly, and I was like, oh, we got to get our stuff organized. So I bought a book. I looked at it, I got really overwhelmed, stuck it in a drawer and did nothing with it, which I think most people who've bought a book probably have a similar experience because it's just a lot to think about. So instead what I've done is I've broken it down into pieces, smaller chunks. I provide a checklist of information ahead of time. And then when I actually meet with someone, they share their information and I type it in. So I've made it as easy as possible. So you've got that, that streamlined process of like, okay, all I have to do is get the information. Sarah will put it in the book and, get it sorted. And give me everything I need to check on, and and then also the accountability piece of making sure that it actually gets done. Because I think so many people intend to do this work, but life, right? Like there's always something coming up. It's until you make it a priority, it's not going to be one. But then sometimes you will find that maybe we waited a little bit too long to do some of this work, and that's what we want to avoid.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I actually titled this, I think I maybe copied this from another thing that another podcast you were on or something. I'm like, this is really good. But just the thought, like, are you ready for the curveball? Because nobody expects. And I know I shared a little bit of my story in our most recent experience with you, but my father-in-law passed away last August. And although we were anticipating him I mean, we knew he was in the last few years of his life, we were not prepared or ready for when it actually happened. And my mother-in-law, who is the most organized, prepared ahead of time, has all her ducks in a row, they had so many things figured out. I think even watching her and my husband walk through the aftermath of there were still so many things that they had to figure out and that they had to do and that they hadn't thought of, and phone calls that had to be made. And it's like, on top of that, you're burying your parent and your husband of 46 years, and you're trying to sleep and eat. And then you're answering all the texts and the phone calls and the people coming into town. It's just so much, even for the most prepared person in the world.
Yeah.
So when I think about, well, before I met you, when I thought about death, or okay, what would our kids do? I thought about wills, and I thought about life insurance policies and all of that. What makes your service different than some of those legal aspects and makes it really essential outside of like the traditional things that people think about?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, though, I know we've already talked about this, but again, I'm so sorry for the experience that you've had. It's so hard to lose someone. And even when you are prepared, it's just so overwhelming. And the conflict of, as you said, you still have to eat and take care of the kids and do all the things, the grief and the needing to manage things, the conflict that comes in there, it's so hard to navigate. And so again, that's partly why we do this work. It's still going to be hard, though. There's just, we can't plan our way out of grief. Like that's just not possible. But if we do some of this ahead of time, it can make things easier in that moment. So, there's a little bit more room for grief and still having to manage things. But like it's such a complicated, part of life. So I'm glad that she had a lot of what she needed. It makes a big difference.
Yes. Well, she really needed you, but we didn't help you guys.
Well, yes, but I hear that a lot actually. So it's yes. Well, and that's why to me it was like, oh, is nobody doing this? Because I was pretty sure I could just go get this job. Like it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So, but yes, to speak to the estate portion of the piece. So it's, what I do does not replace a will or any of your legal documents. It's not a legal document, will not stand up in court, probably. I mean, I've never tried, but I wouldn't bet money on it. But what it is a great companion piece to your will. So a will, like most people think about your estate planning documents, and they think about the will and the, power of attorneys and those sorts of things, guardianship for your kiddos, those sorts of things. And it's essential to have those created as well. So you must do those as well. It's just, it's very good work. If you need a good lawyer, let me know. I've got several of them, but it's just, it's so important to make sure that we do have those legal documents in place. However, they only cover this much of what we're talking about. And so what I like to call, I've called my book, it's actually a pre-planning guidebook. And I like to call it a map. So it says, like, it doesn't replace a will, but it's going to tell somebody where to find it. It's going to tell somebody where to find your guardianship paperwork and your power of attorney documents and how to contact those people. It's basically kind of a one-stop shop of, okay, you're not here. You can't do what you normally do. What does somebody else need to know? Go to the book and start there. It should tell you what you need to know. for the personal side, it tells you about caring for the kids and the pets. It tells you about, what bills need to be paid or closed or managed,
Right.
credit cards, just all of those pieces that if you're not there, somebody else is going to have to sort them out. So it gathers them all together into one place so that it's just easier to manage. Yeah. So it doesn't replace it. Great companion. And if you haven't done your estate planning yet, if you bring your attorney this, it's a fillable PDF, but if you basically show them a copy and be like, hey, I have all this information already gathered together, it's going to take them a lot less time to do your estate planning work because they have to ask about all that anyways. So it's great work to do ahead of time because I'm way cheaper than a lawyer.
That's so great.
They're worth it, but also
that's so great.
Yeah.
You help families, individuals with this, but also small business owners. And I know that that's a different book than the personal. So talk about that.
Yeah. So yes, thank you. It's another great, I've got a story for everything, you guys. Life is just full of things, isn't it? And I'm sure we all share stories because there's just always something. So I started doing the pre-planning for families at the end of 2020. So I did that for a couple of years. And then last year, I was helping a lot more small business owners do their pre-planning. And I had a small section in my previous book dedicated towards, a business. It was like 4 pages long though. And so as I was working with more of these business owners, I was like, well, this is not nearly enough information, but I only knew what I knew, right? I didn't, I hadn't had all those experiences yet. And I'm a very small business. So like, I don't have all of the technical details that some of them have. But it wasn't really thorough enough. And so I'd had the idea of, well, maybe there's something here I need to, create a little booklet or something. And then in September of 2022, we had traveled to Nashville, Tennessee for my birthday. We were going to visit some family. So excited about it. It was the worst trip ever because I ended up getting super sick and had to have emergency surgery in Nashville, Tennessee. So I was not prepared for that. Ironic given what I do. But I did not have my business information prepared for my husband to manage things. And so that same weekend, so I was in the hospital. We'd taken our dogs with us because, family trip. So my husband was going back and forth from the hospital, trying to manage both the dogs and me. And the night that he had taken me to the ER, he was in a car accident and could not drive the car. Like his brother had to bring our other car down and switch cars because it was not drivable. So he was managing that. And then I had appointments and I had sessions scheduled. I had all of these things that he had to step in and help me manage because I couldn't. And it was just, a very big spotlight light bulb moment of this is not okay. I have to get things better prepared.
Yeah.
Because this was a mess. Right. Now, could we have prepared for that? No. I mean, all the planning in the world wouldn't have fixed that situation. That was just a lot of pieces.
Right.
But it was so complicated and it was so hard for us to figure out all those pieces. And so that is when I started to work on the business pre-planning book. And so it's basically all about your business. So, it's the information. And I actually had somebody who's gone through the process say, you know what, I've already used my book. So they're still here. But we start with the operations piece, because if something happens, somebody needs to know right now how to step into your business. Here's what they need to start with. So, stuff like your EIN number that you need every year when you pay your taxes, or quarterly when you do your taxes. Your EIN number, your LLC, do you have a DBA? It's all of that technical information, but then we also go into what services do you use, what are your passwords, how do you log in, where do you pay bills, what bills do you even have for your business, what's on auto pay, because friends, auto pay is something else. I could talk about that for a while, but it's great until it isn't. Yes. But it's all of those pieces for your business. And so helping people put that all together, and then also look at the legacy planning piece of your business.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even have to be that we don't survive our business. It could be, hey, what if somebody said, I love what you're doing. Here's $1 million check. I want to buy your business. Do you have anything to show them?
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you've got a lot of this gathered together, you could be like, yep, here's where you'll find my policies and procedures. Here's where you'll find all this login information. Here's what I'm using. Here's the process. Here are the tasks that have to be managed. So it's just a good work to have, so that if you do decide to grow and you want to share this information with somebody else, here's what you've got. Also, in an emergency, somebody can go and manage things for your business.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you even, I remember you telling me that you even recommend that the person that you have kind of facilitate, in the event of death or unexpected circumstances, that it actually not be a family member.
I do. I am a very big advocate for that.
Yeah.
And here's why. So as I shared with the story with my husband trying to scramble, the car accident, the caring for the dogs, the wife in the hospital who just had surgery.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, he has to call and cancel things for me. That's not okay, right?
Yeah.
That's too many pieces. And
Yes.
if something happens to us, there are going to be a lot of pieces, especially, even if we're hospitalized, if we die, either way, there are kids to manage, there are pets to manage, there are jobs that people still have to go to. People don't always get bereavement time. It's just, there are so many things that have to keep going, that having somebody we love then also need to step in and manage our business. It's just too many things. And then I know for you work with people, right? You're not you work with people, you have clients, you don't have a product necessarily, you have a process. And so especially in that case, think about, your potentially grieving or stressed out, worried spouse having to call your clients and say, there's been an accident, she's in the hospital. Like, your clients are going to have feelings about that, right? Because they care about you and you've got a good relationship with them. And then your spouse is having to manage your clients' feelings. Like, that's, again, it's too much. So what I very strongly recommend to people is having what I call a business executor.
Yeah.
So it's just like you have an executor for your will. It's name someone, tell them about it, and say, if something happens to me, spouse should get your book, should contact your executor, hand it over, and then they should be able to take it from there, basically, because it'll have the information on where to find your client list. It'll have the information on how to pay the bills and close things down. And then that other person who is not your family or a close friend, maybe it is a close friend, but it's not somebody who's in your core unit, who's able to manage those things on your behalf. They can just turn it over, and gosh, the feeling of relief that your family should have by knowing that things are going to get managed. It's being handled by this person over here. I don't even have to worry about the business. They've got it covered. And either they can keep things going for us to come back to, because that's a possibility, there all kinds of things happen, or they can shut things down if we can't come back to our business for whatever reason.
Right. Oh, I just think that is so genius.
Thank you.
Okay, so I am confident that, basically you're speaking to everyone in my network, because I have a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners in my network and audience, but also families, which all of us are not immune to this happening to us or to someone very close to us. I actually had, anyway, I've told a couple of people about you. I need to actually connect you guys. So if someone is watching this and they're like, okay, I would like to know a little bit more, where can they find you and what would you like them to do next?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. And I'd love to hear your story at some point, because it sounds like you've got a good one. It's the more I do this work, the more I realize that everybody has a story. Everybody's had an experience, and it's one of the more unfortunate realities of life, but anyways. So yes, I'm Sarah Kendrick. My business is Rhea Services, which is RHEA Services. You can find me on LinkedIn, Nope. Yes, you can. LinkedIn, Instagram, obviously, Instagram and Facebook. So you can find me there. You can go to my website, which is reaservices.com. Again, RHEA services.com. You can feel free to email me, Sarah at reaservices.com, if you have specific questions. And then I know that we were going to talk about this just a little bit, but so I've put together a list of 5 questions that business owners need to answer. And I've put that information on my website, and I know you're going to link to it. Y'all, I do not give you the answers. I've got some, if you have not answered those questions yet, let's talk, because there are some pieces that we just need to consider. We are so business owners, we get so in the weeds of just doing our business, right? Because that's the piece that we love. That's the part that we really enjoy, is like, let's go do the thing. We don't think about all of these other pieces because we're so busy doing.
Right.
However, there may be a better time to do this work, but I also can guarantee that there's a much worse time.
Yes.
And so it's just, if we can start to gather those pieces together, make it a little bit easier, make it a little bit more accessible, let's do that. So yeah, go check out those questions and see if you've got answers for them. Great, you got started. I'd love that. I'd love to hear that too. So yeah, email me if you've already got some of them managed. But if you don't, if they are brand new questions that you've never considered, let's talk. I always do complimentary consultations for people.
Awesome.
Because I like to share what I do and I like to answer questions.
Yes. So if someone wants a complimentary consultation, is the best way to set that up email?
Yep, email, or I'll put my contact information in a comment. Email, phone is fine, but email me. Let's set it up. I don't have a Calendly because I don't like things to automatically jump on my calendar. It freaks me out. So I'm living in the dark ages when it comes to that, but yeah.
That is really funny because that's happened. I'm like, oh, I forgot to shut down that day.
Nope. It's just like, it's a jump scare for me. I'm just like, no, don't, who's waiting around the corner? I just can't. Nope. It doesn't work for me.
So old school, send an email. Yes.
Sorry, guys. Yeah. Carrier pigeon, if you want to go really old school, it's fine. It would be super cute. I would love that. Yeah.
I love it. Well, Sarah, obviously I've told you this before, but your work is incredibly essential and important. And I am going to make sure my network hears this message and gets this message in front of them. And yes, email Sarah for a complimentary consultation. And go ahead and check out her website and those questions. And let's be prepared. Let's not live just waiting for when the curveball is going to happen.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's been lovely to be with you.
Yes. Thanks so much for coming on, Sarah. And I will be back next week. I have another guest. I've kind of got really fun guests booked out. I hope that you guys are enjoying this, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Have a great Wednesday.